Hi guys! Welcome to Young and Limitless. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking to a dear friend of mine called Christianne. And she's going to give us a masterclass in how to build deeper relationships with our children, our young people, so that we can inspire them and motivate them to do really well in their tests and exams and understand that the skills that they're learning are completely transferable into jobs, into the workplace, into relationships, and throughout their whole life. What I've done is I've listed the times and the different issues that we talk about, so you can just go straight to the one you want, or you can listen to the whole thing all the way through. There's an age difference between you and the young people I work with. So obviously things
No way.
things have changed quite dramatically. So when you were studying, say in year 9 to say 14 years old, what motivated you to keep studying and to do well in your exams?
Well, I have to say it came from me because I was written off.
Oh,
I was told I ought to go and learn how to arrange flowers. It wasn't thought of as academic. However, times and life changes and clearly my pathway through, I found that I'd got talents and energy to do this work, to get my grades, to get on and move forwards, and I grasped it. I could have gone, can't be bothered. I'll work in a shop, and I did work in a shop for a while.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So what drove you there?
I just believe it comes from something deep inside of yourself.
Okay.
You start to see what it is and your path that you might want, and if and that inner steel or that inner strength that most of us have, even if we haven't looked for it, it's there. And luckily for me, mine was there. And I wasn't the fastest kid on the block back then because I was pretty, really pretty. There were distractions. However, there comes a point when time moves on and you grasp the whole nettle of how you want to live your life.
So you saw your exams as like a mean to an end, like you knew there was more.
Yes.
Did you know what the more was?
I had started to think I would be a teacher, not a florist, but that still took time to get to that part. But I when I got there, over the years, I have been a good teacher.
So what made you a good teacher?
I think being a pretty good parent, to be fair. I have 4 children. They're all massively different in what they're like, but I was a good guide, and I just was I'm great on intuition. If I can see something, then I will say it, and I would always encourage. I think encouraging others to find the best in themselves is what we can only ever hope that all children experience. However, I know that they don't all have that experience. But in my heart, that's what I want for kids. I want them to be loved. I want them to be listened to. I want them to be well nourished, mentally, physically, all of that.
What's the biggest challenge any one of your kids presented to you?
The boy was difficult because he was super, super clever. So we were often, there was sword play. And we certainly had our head-to-heads. And one day I took him out into the garden and I gave him a great long, like taekwondo type stick. I had one and he had one. I said, do your worst.
Okay.
I was taught to fence. I knew how to fence. So this boy was going to be on a loser, whatever happened. However, what he did was we had a proper full-on, like, martial art fight.
And what did that change?
He had to decide when to stop. And that moment, when he realised that I was capable of parrying, and I didn't fight, I just parried, he just suddenly went, this is crazy. Because why shouldn't the children discover it for themselves, you know? And he did. And he stopped. Yeah. And then he started applying that beautiful brain of his.
So he understood that actually
he did.
Quite a lot.
But he found his way to it. And do you know what I kind of say, isn't that the key? We don't need to be telling them what to do all the time, because how do they say, well, I can do that. If you can do that, then do it, you know? It's the responsibility of taking charge of yourself. Is if a parent can let go enough for the child to find their path, the child is the absolute winner, and the parent can go, job done. Good job.
It can be difficult to role model that, or difficult just to let go, because you see them going off over there and like you're going, so you're meant to be going that way.
It is difficult. But no one said being a parent was easy.
If a parent wanted to do something similar to what you did, but obviously didn't know anything about fencing, what else could they do instead? How else could they give their kid that real life example?
I think the biggest thing that as a parent is you can listen and hear, because listening and hearing do not always go together. Parents hear the first listen bit and then go, But to actually pull yourself back, so you listen, you hear, you understand what they're telling you, and then you discuss. How are we going to move forwards from that? You know, I've got all my life skills now because I'm an adult. You're gaining your life skills as a young person or even a child or whatever it is, and allowing them to start taking a lead, an own responsibility for their thoughts, their actions, their understanding. But it is only by good listening and reflecting back that listening to say, have I got this right? Have I understood you correctly? I mean, it may sound all too airy-fairy for some people, those kinds of ideas. But do you know what? If you've been doing it since they were quite little, it's like a second skin.
And they're used to it as well.
Yeah, they're used to it. You go out to work and you say, I can't do this today because I've got a task I have to do. However, I will build in time to give you my undivided attention when you come home from school tonight.
Yeah.
And it's about negotiating, but then life is about negotiating. You think all of us have had bosses who have been more or less difficult or easy to be with. And how did we do that? Well, we had to negotiate and we had to be a bit smart.
Yes.
Sometimes we could go to the wire, sometimes we'd step back from the wire, and occasionally you go over the wire, because you do have to be brave as well.
So when you said about listening and hearing, there's a gap in between that, where a lot of young people I talk to, they aren't always good at articulating their feelings, and sometimes it's what they're not saying. It's hearing what they're not saying as well as what they are saying, isn't it?
And that's why the adult should be perhaps able to ask the right question, to dig that bit out. It is like it is like archaeology. You sometimes have to mine, or coal mine, you have to mine for the information you want. But it's worth the time, isn't it? It's your child.
And it does take time as well to develop those skills. But like I said, if you've been doing it since they were little, it does come like a bit like second nature.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you did have a young person and they weren't quite saying very much, what questions could you ask to help them figure it out so they could tell it to you?
Well, there are questions, but also sometimes give them a bit of silence so that you're not always interjecting. Because sometimes we jump in, don't we? We jump in and say, oh, this is what you need to do. And then, in fact, if you just stepped back and perhaps a few more questions, how would you like to do that? What would be best for you to get the outcome you want? So, yes, there can be a sort of mismatch of patterning between the adult and the young person. And of course, that's not counting the hormonal stuff that is around at certain times in the young person's life. However, if you push that to one side, if you have found a way of making your contact, your relationship with your child, where you listen, you question. Can you tell me a bit more about that? How that might feel for you, or how that might be for you? Then the chances are they'll open up. And if they're not ready to open up, just say, do you know what? We'll leave this for the moment. And if it's okay with you, we'll come back to it when you're ready.
That's nice because it makes them feel they have a little bit of control there.
Yes.
It's a bit safe, much safer than...
It's safe. Sometimes I would also suggest that if you want to have a difficult conversation with your child, don't do it at home.
Oh.
Go out to the park, take a picnic, have a cup of tea with you, or whatever it is, so that you're not in the discipline of the home, which the kids pretty much know. Be fair to them on that. But if they need to talk about something else, just give them the air and the time to do it in somewhere else. When the adults become mindful of the things that they do that really work, then doesn't it just become easier to do those things? And the young person will say, wow, mum and dad do this, or I go and talk to dad in the shed and to mum in the greenhouse, or whatever it is, or in the kitchen. Wherever it is that they know that they find that perhaps that softer relationship when they want it.
My sister takes each kid out to Costa or Starbucks, and one likes one and one likes the other, so they go out and that's their thing.
Yes, but that's right. I think if you can nail it, where and what, then you have got it nailed for life. It means your children trust you and you trust them.
What if they tell you that they are really struggling with the fear of somebody thinking they're not good enough because they're not going to get the right results? They're not going to, the fear of being judged, basically.
It's a difficult one to answer. If we all had like magical spells that we would cast, no person in the world would have to experience any kind of judgment or prejudice feeling, but the world isn't like that. So we have to say, how can we best armour you to be able to overcome that? And for some young people, it might be, I'm quite good if I meditate or do deep breathing exercises, because the children are more organised around that kind of thinking than they were in my young day. More of them do yoga or Pilates or even mindfulness in schools. That there is more of a background of understanding what those methods are. So I would use anything that you know works for you. So if it's just a question, I'm feeling anxious, take yourself out of the situation. Deep breathe, come back. I saw a YouTube yesterday. Autistic child was given bubbles to blow because they had to breathe out and then they had to breathe back in before they could blow the next bubble. And that was calming.
I like that.
I also learned from watching it that music that has 60 beats to the minute mirrors heart rate and therefore is soothing and calming. So we're always learning about how to think about things, manage things, improve things. But that whole business about relaxing the body and improving your endorphins just by breath. There you go. Anxiety, look, if anxiety is deep-seated, that takes work. If it's low-level anxiety, simple methods can get simple results because it will just reduce it down to where you are not paralyzed, that you're not like the rabbit in the headlights. Obviously, if you are reaching that stage, then help comes from other quarters, like your GP or an educational psychologist, or you might not get, but some kind of therapeutic method that is over and above what any parent can give if your child is that anxious. So the parents being peaceful is hugely important. We can't, it's up to us to be the grown-up. It's not going to be easy and the exam time is brief, thank heavens. But if you can keep your cool and help them to keep theirs, you can sit with them and breathe. What's the hardship? You've had a hard day at work, let's breathe. We can breathe this out. I'm not just saying that's like a pill for all seasons, but it's something, as you say, is free and accessible to anyone.
And it's good for parent and good for child.
Yeah.
Everybody benefits in that situation.
Yes. If the child, young person is able to think of the exams as the ordinary tests that they have done throughout the whole of their primary and secondary schooling, if they can just notch it into there, it's just asking me what I know.
Yes.
And the fear is, I don't think I know it. But actually, you do. And you may, and the breathing helps you to access it. But there are all sorts of techniques, aren't there, for accessing knowledge and recording knowledge in ways that makes it accessible. Did you want to move on to that at all? Or?
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, then. So if you're thinking about, I'm revising, I'm doing a topic. It's a topic I don't know quite as well as the others. So, I can either, whatever your personal style is, and this should overcome all the different learning styles, you either mind map, because that's pretty cool, and it works for those that are perhaps, more artistic in a way. For those who have a more logical brain, they can bullet point stuff. It's still the same picture with the same information, but it makes it accessible, if you like, for the two kinds of, right-handed brain, left-handed brain thinking. And so, yes, mind maps, bullet points, and people who are really very critical learners in themselves, they will make file cards.
Yes.
And they will colour code them. And they will number them.
Yes.
And all of those things. And that really covers most of the parameters of how you do that kind of stuff. If you know you've got a really difficult word that you want to learn, There is a method for that as well. I will give you the fancy name for it. It's called neuro-linguistic programming. But basically, I do a shortcut on that one, where I close the eyes and I take the word and I put each letter into a box. And if it's a vowel sound, I give the vowels the colour red. So I get my vowels and consonants in the right order. Most children, especially earlier down the school years, they could use that very beneficially. Just before exams, it might be a bit of a pinch. But there's always A-levels, and there's always college, and there's always other things where that same idea might be useful.
I mean, it's a life skill for forever, isn't it? So
yeah,
you might have a presentation, or you might have to talk to a group of people, or you're going to have to remember stuff throughout your whole life.
And as far as I'm aware, most of our young people do PowerPoint presentations. They make them for the classroom. They do them either individually or in small groups. They have practice at this. When they look at their teachers who are providing them with their lessons on the beautiful whiteboard, whatever system they have, this isn't something foreign to our young people. It's normal. So they've actually been absorbing this style for a very long time, and they need to use what they know to maximum benefit themselves.
Yeah. So that brings us lovely onto transferable skills. So what you learn in school and what you can learn when you're revising for a test or an exam is you can transfer it into other parts of your life when you're older.
Absolutely.
It's not that you're only learning information for a test that will be done and dusted. It's you're learning the skills you're developing are key for everything else you're going to do later on.
Yes, whether you're an apprentice or whether you are going to college, whether you're going on to any vocational courses, it doesn't matter what the level of qualification is. You had to learn it. You had to have an examination in it. You got your result in it. And you know what? No one can ever take your result away from you.
Absolutely.
It's yours. You can improve on it if you want to. But if you get a good result, wow, have you earned it? And it's a benchmark of everything else you do for your future learning.
So some of the young people in year 9 and 10 genuinely concerned about there has been 2 years now of not having any proper past papers to practice on. So they're worried, what if exams change, the structure changes, and they aren't how to prepare themselves when there's been a 2-year gap?
Okay. It is a really good question from the year 9 and year 10s. Overall, question papers do not change very much year on year. They might have a slight jiffle towards one angle, whereas, say, for example, you're doing Romeo and Juliet, maybe there was something a bit more about Romeo, or maybe there was something a bit more about Juliet. But that didn't mean that you didn't have to talk about both of them. Do you see what I'm saying?
Still need to know.
You still need to know. If you're doing comprehension, that's the same every year. You read the piece in front of you. You really, really look at it, and then you really, really underline the important points. Hopefully, read the questions before you start, because your brain, this marvelous thing, starts to look for the answers. So with comprehension questions, I always say, read the questions, read the article twice, underline, then fire away your answers. If you're doing multiple choice questions, let's assume a multi-choice question in science. Cover the answer, because you have 3 or 4. Cover them up. Read the question. When you uncover it, You go, that one. Because your brain knows the answer.
You know what? I love that. I wish I knew that years ago, because sometimes they're so similar, aren't they? And again, I don't know, my God, no.
You'd be puzzling.
Brilliant.
But if you read the question, and I am a great one for reading questions twice, and that's quite important. But we don't have a lot of time in an exam room. We have limited time. So cover the answers, read the question, make sure you've understood what it's asking you for, uncover it, and the right one tends to go ping.
Wow.
Yes. Most questions of the other kind, mostly comprehension ones as well, if there's 1 mark associated with it, it's a 1-word answer. If there are 2 marks, it's saying, please write a sentence. And I'd like the answer and a because. Okay, so 2-mark questions, either 2 pieces of information or 1 piece of information, and that's because it's X, Y, and Z. As soon as you get to more like 8 or 12 points of marking, they are wanting you to write something pretty serious. They probably want a beginning, a middle, and an end, or they want something that is concretely written in a way that the examiner goes, yes, 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 because they'll be looking. They have a mark sheet and they just go tick, tick, tick. They won't necessarily read every single word. One of your students asked, what if they can't read my handwriting? Valid question, good question. I used to mark A-level papers. Okay. When the handwriting was really, really difficult to read, I would spend twice as long on marking the exam paper because I had to make sure that I had picked up every single positive mark for the student. So that's not the child's responsibility. If the child can write as neatly as possible, fantastic. If you can't, that's what examiners get paid to do, read and mark exam papers. That's their responsibility.
Good, because
and if they have to take twice as long for 1 or 2, so be it. That's the way it is. Where a pupil has special educational needs,
they get extra time.
They get exam considerations, which can be someone who can write for them if their writing is extremely difficult, you know, or there can be someone who will act as what they call an amanuensis, basically write for you.
Okay.
But they're in the rarer forms of special ed.
Yeah.
Mostly you get an extra time. Now, this is a horrible sword for special needs children because it means I've got to spend more time in this room. Okay, I get that. But what it does, it allows for extra ideas to pop in your head and be added to what you have written. Don't think of it as an imposition. Think of it as an opportunity.
How long ago did you retire?
Well, I did work until I was 68.
Okay.
So I will say that's 5 years now.
Okay.
Because I am an old lady. I'm a proper grandma. However, I worked longer because I loved it.
Yeah.
And I did all the special tuition, the 1-to-1, to get young people's English grades up from a level 4 to a level 6. And I used to do that in 8 weeks. The head of department who had me doing this work, he said, I know that you do far more than teach them English. So he recognised that kind of special relationship of understanding and all the things I've been talking about.
It's about confidence and self-esteem, but then when you've been talking about talking, listening and hearing, that's where the self-confidence gets built, isn't it?
But I also know that classrooms run on a tight schedule.
No.
And that the teachers don't always have that flexibility but I'm not making excuses for them.
No.
Because most of the kids can get to see them during a break time or during special study sessions, and they can approach them. There was a lovely thing that I watched The Karate Kid once, and it's a clip I used to show to my children. And it's where the youngster was on the edge of this platform over the water, and he had to do a balance.
Oh, yes.
And obviously, the karate master, he says, your focus needs more focus. Yeah? And the children used to watch that clip, and I said, have you got it? And they went, yeah, we've got that. We understand what that is. Yes?
Yeah.
And that's a life skill as well.
It is.
You take that focus out into the workplace, and no one says your focus needs more focus, because you are focused. You have learnt that requirement.
Yes. Which goes hand in hand with motivation and discipline. It all stems
Yes.
together, doesn't it?
It all squishes together in a big sandwich.
Yeah. So let's talk about how can what tips or tricks do you have for young people creating a revision plan or timetable?
Yes.
They can actually.
I think that's another very good question that your youngsters came up with. And I always, when I used to do it for family mostly, and nephews and nieces and stuff like that. So I'd show them what timetable they had for the actual tests, their exams, and then we'd plot it in to the timetable so they could do chunks of revision for the tests that came the first.
Okay.
Yeah. And fit it. So if they did that in the morning session, in the afternoon, they sorted out that tricky subject that they needed to get to grips with. They could have the easy in the morning, or if they can twist it round, it's entirely up to how you like to work. And if you need to sleep till 9, that's what you do. And you do 10 to 12 with a break in between, because you must eat, snack, hydrate, and twiddle around the room going crazy dancing, and then come back to it. So that's my general thing. You put something into the morning for your need, something into the afternoon, and then in the evening you relax.
And breaks are really important.
Yes, breaks are important.
Getting away from your desk.
And if you think, well, actually, there's something I just want to reread from what I did in that difficult one before I go to bed, do that, and then you will get the benefit of that going further into your brain. I just need to do something for you. Short-term memory here, middle-term memory here, long-term memory there. Okay. First bit of work you do here. Some of it you may have done before, and if you haven't and it resonates, it rings a bell with you, it will move to here. Quite accessible, both of those places. The thing that you did last year, and that was the idea between covering the answers to the multi-choice question, comes from here.
Yeah.
When you think you weren't listening in the classroom, it's here. All right. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So it's all still there. It's there. You have it. You know it.
Yes, because the brain is a wonderful thing. Yeah. It is an absolute marvel. And even in old age, when you lose memory, the functioning part is here. Yeah. Your long-term memory. If you mirror your revision work to how you know your exam work is going to be, and I think probably most of your students have already been revising. My tip for your year 10s, and your year 9s can listen to that too, obviously. In year 10, read through your stuff that you did, because you're pushing it, you're picking it up and pushing it back into that bit that will spark your memory in an exam room.
I
Okay.
often tell them it's never too early to start as well. Just maybe not revising, but just like consolidating what you've
Yeah.
learned.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely. Or if something puzzled you, you've
mm,
got plenty of time to ask your teacher.
mm.
Don't be puzzled. Will the teacher like the question? They'll know you've been thinking about it. So why not? Can you email your teachers? Yes, you can. You could have a group in Year 10 that said, what's puzzling us this week? It's this, this, and this. We'll write a group email to the teacher and they will tackle it in the lesson. They'll put a bit of time aside to deal with that. Be opportunistic and proactive.
And I love it that even though you think everybody else has got it, when you ask the question, you then realise there's like 6 other people minimum who don't know what that was either.
They're dishonest, that's why.
So yeah.
And what if a kid ever asked me a question that I didn't know the answer to, I would say, I don't know the answer to that, but I will find it out for you and I will tell you next time I see you. Because no one has everything to their fingertips like that.
Yeah, we're not Google.
We're not Google, exactly. It's nothing to be fearful of. The not knowing is lots of people don't know stuff. Even Einstein didn't know stuff, but he did know the stuff that he did, you know, but he wouldn't know everything. There are some amazingly creative inventors who hide away in their garages and make amazing things, but you ask them to be sociable and they can't. So if you're a young person who is fairly sociable, has good social skills, ability to talk to your neighbours, your friends and your family, that transfers into the workplace too. And so long as you're not ruled by social media, because I know that's a current youth problem, and a young person, even into their mid-20s, it's an issue for some. And I can see why, because everybody has got something to say about everything. The trouble is they don't know everything.
No. So actually what you're showing is that we're all a little bit unique in that we might be really gifted in one area but not very good with social skills or whatever. So it's acknowledging that, but still working at making, us as surrounding as we could.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
if you're really good with animals or babies, not everybody is.
People are good at numbers and not good at English, or the other way around.
All of those things. There's a whole mass. We are a massive world full of masses of skills. No one person can have them all because I think their brain might die of overload.
Yeah, they'd blow up for sure. So,
Yeah.
and also what's really nice and gave me hope when I was a young person was that I always believed my skills would be seen at some point. I had hope that, no, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then, I knew that eventually they would pop up and it would be obvious. So, and that's having hope, having a dream, believing in your dreams.
Yeah.
Not giving up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that not giving up is really important. And do trust yourself, because you will always know more than you think you do. And please get sleep. Children, please get sleep. Your brain needs all this food, all this attention, and it needs to go to sleep.
Yeah. And that's really important because even a lot of adults don't have good sleep hygiene. So, it's just a society's problem, isn't it?
And I know many youngsters will say, I can do my revision with music on in the background. Yeah, great. Are exam rooms noisy with music? Sadly not. So obviously don't deprive yourself of music, but do think about silent study as well as background music study. So A, I don't want anyone to feel deprived, and B, I don't want you not to have the experience of silence.
Yeah, make it as realistic as a practice experience as you can.
Yes. Have your noise in the evening, whatever that your special noise is.
So one of my last questions
Yeah.
is, so people say cramming, okay, everybody's crammed. I've crammed, but cramming isn't that useful. Why not?
Well, I think that probably goes back to how I was telling you about how the brain works. If you cram, it's only here. It might come out there. It might travel down your arm onto a piece of paper. So
Oh my God, straight out.
it might go straight out. Because you might be so pressurizing your brain to be active that you'd be better off glancing at a mind map or something. But don't do anything taxing, not at the last minute, because it's likely that it will stress you rather than save you. I can see why it's tempting. And I can see why, they meet out just before they go in the exam hall and they go, oh, I haven't done that. Yeah, but you did all the other things. Concentrate what you have done.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
And everyone does it differently. But basically, make sure you're fed, watered, sleep well, aren't arguing with the parents, try and avoid it. They must do the same.
That is a hard thing to do, because some of the parents want their kids to do so well that the pressure just builds, and then it's just like, Mum, just don't talk to me. Don't say anything, don't say good luck.
You know what I'd say to the parents on that score?
What?
Step back. Do make sure the parents have got all the necessary pens and equipment for them when they go in. So the see-through pencil case, all of those. That's what parents can do. The basic stuff, the protractors, the whatever else is required, the ruler, because most kids like a ruler for some reason. They like to underline things. But in a way, that's allowing the brain to start trickling down the arm to the hand to do the writing.
Yes.
And don't be afraid to write on the exam paper. Because if I don't care what the school says about it, do it. Whilst that exam paper is with you, if a thought comes into your head and you're not given rough paper for whatever reason, which you won't be mostly, write on the exam paper, because as one thought goes down, the next thought comes, and that way you avoid freeze.
Cool, thank you. That's amazing. So, Christianne, I would just like to thank you for your time and sharing your experience and explaining how the memories are in different parts. And and I love what you said about, it's almost just trust yourself. You've revised, you've done the work, and breathing. Breathing is so key. It's something we just take for granted sometimes, don't we? Yeah, so thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Well, guys, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I hope you've learnt some good stuff and that you're going to put it into practice. So please like and subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye.